that this session, after the tea break, is titled Economic Thoughts of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. And chairperson for this session is Dr. Sam Lanfranco, York University, Canada, and global consultant on economy, health, and IT. May I call upon Dr. Sam Lanfranco. Please join your hands to welcome the chairperson of this session.
I would like to start by thanking the people who pulled this event together, the government of Maharashtra and the Social Justice and Special Assistance Department. But I would also like to thank you for coming. You've taken time out of your lives to come here. This is very important for me, and I'm sure it's very important for you. And the one thing I will start with is that I like questions. At the end of this, if you have questions, chase me down. As long as I'm alive, I will try to answer your questions, probably with more questions. I would like to first start with a tribute to Dr. Ambedkar. I first encountered him 25 years ago when I was involved in the founding of the Ambedkar Center for Justice and Peace and his centenary celebrations. We held those in Toronto, in Canada, near where I live. I would like to start by commenting and saying that my view as an outsider, and we have the experts on the panel who know much more about Ambedkar and much more about his economics than I do, so I'm going to talk in more general terms. As an outsider, my reflections on Ambedkar and his writings can be summarized in a fairly simple way. I'm an economist. I have another friend who's an economist, originally from Bengal, Amartya K. Sen. Amartya K. Sen has won the Nobel Prize in Economics and has shared the national award in India with Dr. Ambedkar posthumously for contributions to civil society here. But Dr. Ambedkar would have won a Nobel Prize in Economics had he been alive when the Nobel Prize was being awarded. There's no question about that. Unfortunately, it's not given posthumously, so we can't go back and give it, but there's no doubt in my mind, and there should be no doubt in your minds. Okay. Having said that, I want to make some very simple comments. He was a scholar, he was a statesman, he was very wise as a political actor. I won't call him a politician because I think politician does not do him justice. I would say he was a very wise actor on the political stage. And I would like to open my comments about him by having you reflect on one thing. One thing, a very simple thing. The actions of two people that were very ordinary actions. When he was a child and a student, he had a teacher who said, "This is a bright student." He did not say, "This is a schedule cast student." He said, "This is a bright student." A very simple observation and a very simple action. And the Maharaja of Baroda agreed and said, "This is a bright student," in later years, and I will fund his education. Both merit-based decisions on the part of two people making very ordinary decisions. What I'd like you to think about for a moment now and a little longer later is what would have happened if that teacher had said to Ambedkar, "You should go to the fields and become a sugarcane worker." no, is they were ordinary acts by ordinary people who changed things. They were not heroic acts. I mean, Ambedkar engaged in heroic acts, and we need leaders that engage in heroic acts. But they were very common acts to simply say, caste does not matter. Ability, merit, opportunity are important. If I had been constrained the same way that thousands of young children in the rural sector are constrained, or young children, in the slums of the big cities are constrained now, I wouldn't be here either. You wouldn't be here. None of us would. And WAG for their comments and being shorter than they had hoped they would be. I'm going to keep my comments very short in part so there can be some time for questions. I have lots of material that I will just take a lead from Dr. Ambedkar. It's taken 125 years for people to take some of his work seriously. I hope it takes less time for me. Thank you. I'll start with some very general comments. I won't go to the agricultural sector, which I was going to talk on a little bit. I'll just put out some challenges, and I'll end up with a question, which I think is the question that Dr. Ambedkar would be asking if he were here today. The first comment is that India keeps saying to the world, we are the world's biggest democracy. That's true. What I'd like to see India be able to do is stand up and say, we are the world's best democracy. To be a best democracy, you have to have a healthy democracy. India at the moment has a democracy, but it is a crippled democracy because of exclusion and oppression. But the potential is there, and I will get to Ambedkar there, and I'd like to refer to the statue of Ambedkar over here. Many of these statues of Ambedkar have his hand up like this, the Constitution here, sometimes the hand here. What does that mean? For me, it means two things. It means he's raising his hand both to make a point and to say, you should have a question. You should be asking. Well, what should you be asking? You should be asking several things about what he means for today. One, and if he were here, I'm sure he would agree on this, he does not want you to carry, or me, to carry him on our shoulders like he's a god. He's not a god. He's a mortal among us. He was among us. He's a man of the people. What he would prefer, and I may be wrong, he would prefer for us to stand on his shoulders so we can look farther and see farther and carry on his work. He should carry us in our work. We shouldn't carry him like a god. The other thing is, and I want to make a quick reference to the caste system. If we were to open the papers tomorrow and discover that all of the water buffalo in Kerala had decided to create a caste system tomorrow, and some water buffalo worked, some water buffalo didn't work, they took the profit, they took the benefits of those that worked, some water buffalo children could be educated, others couldn't. India would treat that as a national disaster if it happened to the water buffalo. It should treat it as a national disaster that it happens to the people of India. You know, we should have as much concern for us as we have for the water buffalo. Okay. The third point I want to make, and I'm going to refer over to the agricultural sector here. There was discussion yesterday at other events and discussion here about the small farmers. Well, coming from a farming background, a small farmer, they're the tiny plots, but a small farmer may or may not be economically viable. It's not the size of the farm, it's the viability of the agricultural production on the farm. And many changes in technology over the years, including how farmers work together to source their inputs and supply their outputs. And there are examples around India of groups of farmers, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 farmers collaborating either in the marketing of their products or the buying of their inputs. I work with one in Orissa a little bit called KUTIRSB, K-U-T-I-R-S-B, which has about 80,000 farmers involved. And they basically use cell phones to improve buying and selling. Okay, and the technique is being looked at in Latin America. I don't know where else it's being looked at in India. Okay. So the reason I point to that is if there is going to be a use of Dr. Ambedkar's wisdom and knowledge and analysis now, there has to be awareness raising, which has been talked about in terms of the caste system and human rights. There has to be engagement, not just awareness raising, but engagement. And the engagement has to be all of the participants. And in particular, in farming, the engagement in the policies has to include the small farmers. In many countries, farming has become two pieces: small farmers who are poor and large farmers who may or not be successful, but they are too big to fail. When they get in trouble, the government bails them out because they're too big to fail. India has to move toward food security, sustainable agriculture. The role of farm to a very low level probably is positive in that. But from the city or the outside, it looks like they are too small. They may not be too small. They may just be lacking knowledge, lacking the organization to do what they need to do. They may lack the education. So you want to focus on that. And the last thing I want to say there is, if there's going to be aggregation of land, the migration of farmers to the urban areas, or the children of those farmers, they will not be getting industrial jobs even if they are there, because they don't have the education, they don't have the skills, they don't have the training, and they are not getting them in the cities. And if they do move to the cities, and if you look at China today, much of the population that moved to the cities to take industrial jobs and urban jobs in the last 2 decades is currently unemployed in the cities, and it's a major source of social stress in China today. Those workers outside those steel mills that have been closed cannot go home, and they cannot stay there. So you want a healthy economy, a healthy socioeconomic system to have a healthy democracy. You want a healthy democracy that has everybody engaged, not just in making policy through the parliamentary democratic process, but in implementing the policy. You want to have both engagement in policy making and implementation. My last point here is, if you don't do that, powerful forces will appropriate Ambedkar and his ideas, and they will use them for policies and implementations that do not fulfill the vision that Ambedkar had. So I will finish by just saying, if Ambedkar were here, he would probably say, do not talk anymore about what I said. Talk about what you are going to do now. You can benefit from my knowledge, but what are you going to do now? So thank you, Jai Bhim. Thank you for inviting me.